Sometimes, especially in this body, I feel as though if Christ himself walked through these doors and said what he said thousands of years ago, he would be maligned as a radical and rejected from these doors.
Hello, and welcome to Rainbow Shelter News. I am your host, Osman the Dark, wearing a Doctor Strange related t-shirt, still a bunch of posters on my back wall, and I forgot to make sure to adjust lighting, so I think this is good. Anyways, hey, Jinx Giamat. Trees, trees, trees. Trees, 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 trees. As is required by the ritual I signed with the internet gremlins, which can mess up the internet, so I tried to prevent that. But, yeah, we are going to start with the more tragic news, but it's news. There's going to be grim stuff all around. Wait, I forgot to mention, I am super white, blue eyes, brown hair. And, yeah. So, I think last time I didn't see a lot of these grim stories, but this week has been rough. Kidnapped lesbian's body found in mineshaft 2 months after she was abducted. A 31-year-old South African lesbian's body has been found in a mineshaft almost 2 months after she was kidnapped, which awful, obviously awful. There's not a lot to say. There's not a lot of commentary in this part because this is just awful. It's important to remind people. A Florida teen was gunned down by online boyfriend who is afraid he'd get outed. 19-year-old Florida man has been arrested after police say he shot and killed his online boyfriend because the victim might reveal he's gay. And this stuff would happen less if there wasn't the overall shame in society. Pride Month is all about fighting this stuff. I realize it's July, so it's Disability Pride Month. We'll get to that. Trans man's skull fractured and 2 more hospitalized in a Dublin Pride attack. Yeah, no, this has always been the case. People, Stonewall is one of the more famous examples of fighting the police, but there's always been this sort of attitude. And trans Americans we've lost to violence in 2022. Amara Lage. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Duval Princess. Matthew Spampanato. Once again, I apologize if I mispronounced. Naomi Skinner. Cypress Ramos, Paloma Vasquez, Tatiana LaBelle, Catherine Newhouse, Keisha Webster, Mia Love Parker, Fern Feather, Ariana Mitchell, Ray Muscat, Sasha Mason, Nedra Sequence Morris, Shanelika Yella Dior Hemingway, Brazil Johnson, Kitty Monroe, these are the people who we know about have been lost so far. I know it's not Trans Day of Remembrance, but I think sometimes these reminders are important because people seem to think that things are more okay than they are. So, on to the main stuff. Sorry if I'm a bit, I don't know why I feel a bit not chill. Maybe I had too much caffeine already. So the Disability Pride flag was changed recently because I think it had a lightning symbol. Intersectional advocacy and Pride Matter. Yes. But yeah, it used to have a lightning symbol, was it? Now it doesn't because the previous design was not set up for internet and computers. But if you want to know, this is the Disability Pride flag. And hopefully all intersectional advocacy, hopefully I can get some advocacy done for everyone disabled. Yeah, and this goes on about why to using the older flag. Oh, it is lightning bolt version of the flag. Causes a strobe flicker effect when scrolling. Alabama. I know this is gonna be a shock. Alabama uses the SCOTUS decision to go after gender-affirming care for all. Less than a week after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Alabama has had a ruling in an attempt to prohibit gender-affirming healthcare to trans youth and trans adults. That's right. Affirming fears from LGBTQ plus rights groups about what the decision could mean for queer rights, the state is seeking to lift the federal court injunction that blocked an April law that made providing puberty blockers or hormones to youth a felony offense. Those found guilty of doing so could be punished with up to 10 years in prison. So, because it's not, quote-unquote, rooted in U.S. history, Alabama claims it can ban treatments. In the brief, the state also argues for a ban not only on gender-affirming care for youth, but to trans adults as well. No one, adult or child, has a right to transitioning treatments that is deeply... No one, adult or child, has a right to transitioning treatments that is deeply rooted in our nation's history and tradition. The state can thus regulate or prohibit those interventions for children, even if an adult wants the drugs for his or her child, the brief states. The Constitution reserves to the state, not courts or medical interest groups, the authority to determine that these this person's calling them sterilizing inventions are too dangerous for minors, even though there is nothing sterilizing about puberty blockers. But it's awful. April's law, signed by Republican Governor Kay Ivey, faced several lawsuits after it was passed, which argued the legislation would harm trans children. A federal court blocked parts of the law in May. Most medical organizations support gender-affirming care for trans minors, saying that limiting it could be harmful to trans youth. But they don't care about trans youth, of course. And it's Alabama. And more specifically, Alabama higher-ups in Republican Party. Thomas's concurring opinion targeting marriage equality, private consensual sex, and contraception. If Texas passes a law banning same-sex intimacy, Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Republican, would be willing and able to defend it in court. He told, yeah, it's they're going after just LGBTQ stuff in general, but yeah, anti-LGBTQ laws take effect in 5 more states. Florida is all getting all the attention with the heinous "Don't Say Gay" law taking effect, which get into a little bit more of that. But several other states have major anti-LGBTQ plus laws that come into force on Friday. Prominent among them is Alabama, which it's the legislation requires that students in public schools use the restrooms and changing rooms designated for the gender on their birth certificate. Also says, per the last-minute amendment, an individual or group of individuals providing classroom instruction to students in kindergarten through 5th grade at a public K through 12 school will not engage in classroom discussion or provide classroom instruction regarding sexual orientation or gender identity in a manner that is not age-appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. God, this person's quotes are awful. Here in Alabama, men use the men's room and ladies use the ladies' room. It's really a no-brainer. This bill will also ensure our elementary school... No, I'm terrible with accents. I probably shouldn't make fun of Alabama accent, whatever it is. Now, making fun of Ivy. That's a different story. This bill will also ensure our elementary school classrooms remain free from any kind of sex talk. Let me be clear. The media and opponents who incorrectly dub this as "Don't Say Gay" amendment, that is misleading, false, and just plain wrong. We don't believe gay exists. Therefore, we don't need to be teaching young children about sex or kissing. I thought life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness were deeply rooted in the Constitution. Yeah, but like, you know, just ignore the liberty part. It's not important. Just ignore the philosophical concept of liberty, of which our country has been founded on. Just ignore that. Let's go full authoritarian fight against liberty, because apparently that's what the Republicans are doing at the moment. But anyways, we are talking about 5-year-olds, for crying out loud. We need to focus on what matters, core instruction like reading and math. But not the math that goes against us. That's the bad math. Ivy signed the bill the same day she signed one criminal... Oh, wait. I didn't know Ivy's gender. I tend to assume men are doing awful stuff. I didn't process... like, I can't tell gender based off of names, necessarily. Signed the bill the same day she signed one criminalizing the provision of gender-affirming healthcare to trans youth. That legislation partially blocked by a court while a lawsuit against it proceeds. In Tennessee, 2 laws went into effect Friday, expanded on the trans athlete ban enacted last year. One bars trans women from competing in college athletics teams that match their gender identity. The 2021 law dealt with middle school and high school sports. Another one provides for withholding of state funds from school districts that don't comply with ban affecting middle and high school kids. Wait, do I... have that else? Whatever. Is it specific? Sorry, a lot of these laws, I don't know the wording. Apparently it's just attacking trans women. That I suppose acknowledging trans men exist would break their brains. A third Tennessee law taking effect expands statute requiring that internet providers block quote-unquote obscenity and pornography from school computers. It removes an exception for materials that could be considered educational. Advocates worry the law will be used to restrict access and for resources about LGBTQ plus issues and identity, which Tennessee lawmakers have made clear they believe inappropriate for children. And South Dakota did an anti-trans thing. Trans athlete ban in Indiana and Utah have taken effect. California to become the first state to offer health coverage to all undocumented immigrants. So I don't know how helpful this is with the ICE, but universal access to healthcare cover. Oh, it is actually just. Is it California? Okay, so like California become the first state to offer all. This is a victory for millions of undocumented Californians who contribute $3.7 billion to the state and local taxes, and a bunch to the spending economy. Yeah, I mean, it'd be useful if there was healthcare coverage for all, but like that. I'm not sure how helpful this is with the IC, because IC centers don't care about these laws. So, Los Angeles County returns an oceanfront land seized from a black family in 1924. This was probably covered better on The Daily Show, but it's just sometimes it's good to have good news. So at Los Angeles County, California, Commission has voted to return oceanfront land that was taken from a black family in 1924. This happened to a lot of people's land. Oh, that's all there is there. If you want to know more, they do talk about this on The Daily Show, or at the very least, The Daily Show After Hours. So, video shows Connecticut man's neck break after being mistreated while in police custody. Richard Cox was paralyzed when he was while he was taken into police custody in Connecticut on June 19th. Video footage of the incident shows that the 5 officers who were involved are now on administrative leave. I believe paid administrative leave. You know, because, like, clearly the police force has never cared about this. Cox was put in a van by New Haven police after officers received a weapons complaint at a block party the 36-year-old was attending. At the time, officers said he was in possession of an illegal firearm and was taken into custody. Cox's lawyer, Ben Crump, shared footage of this incident, which shows him being roughly handled. Crump wrote in a tweet, "We literally witnessed his neck break." The video also shows Cox being put in police van without seatbelts, and after an abrupt stop, he was thrown into a wall headfirst. He was still lying on the van floor. He told officers he couldn't move. What did they do? According to people, officers are shown ordering Cox to Move your leg and sit up. He tells them that he can't move before an officer responds, "You're not even trying." He then dragged out of the van, feet first, and thrown into a wheelchair. One officer accuses him of being drunk. The video also shows an officer saying Cox was, quote unquote, perfectly fine. On June 23rd, New Haven Mayor Justin Elliker issued a statement that said the incident resulted in Cox suffering, quote unquote, serious injury to his neck and spine, shock, being put in a van with no seat belts, and having your neck broken. Houses problems. Upon learning of Mr. Cox's injury, the officer made a call for medical assistance and proceeded to drive Mr. Cox to the detention center. He said, he stated in the letter, Mr. Cox made his injury known to the to other officers upon arrival at the detention facility. The officers involved proceeded to put Mr. Cox in detention, first attempting to do so by wheelchair and then physically moving him into detention. He continued saying that after that, American Medical Response transported Mr. Cox to Yale New Haven Hospital where he underwent surgery. Sadly, Mr. Cox's injury may result in his paralysis and he remains in critical condition. Elliker's statement identified the 5 police officers involved who have been placed on administrative leave until the Connecticut State Police completes their investigation. The city conducts its internal affairs investigation, which means they're probably going to get into as much trouble as the murder of George Floyd or other people, just because it's there's too little accountability for police. At what point in time do you believe someone that's saying, "I think my neck is broken," she said. Yeah, it's just, it's awful, and there needs to be strong advocacy to get stuff done. And it's frustrating because it's all over the place. Meanwhile, in Florida, Don't Say Gay law has taken effect. Public schools in Florida have begun implementing new policies to limit discussion of LGBTQ+ issues in classes, following the implementation of the state's parental rights in education law, also known as the Don't Say Gay bill. Instruction on gender identity or sexual orientation is forbidden in kindergarten through 3rd grade. In addition, as a result of the law, such instruction cannot take place in any grade in a matter the state considers neither age-appropriate nor developmentally appropriate. Now teachers in the state are facing a new perilous landscape. So, for example, school officials around Orlando warned educators not to wear rainbow clothing, remove pictures of their same-sex spouses from their desks, and remove LGBTQ+ safe space stickers from classroom doors, said Clinton McCracken, president of the Orange County Classroom Teachers Association. Orange County School District's legal department reminded teachers to be cautious when interacting with kindergarten through 3rd grade students about LGBT+ issues. A statement from the Teachers Association. Brandon Wolf, the press secretary for Equality Florida, told reporters this morning that some messages officials conveyed to teachers are absurd. They should avoid talking about their families altogether so as not to run afoul of the law, he says officials told them. That's right. In Florida, teachers can't mention that they have a wife or husband. The Leon County School Board, but I mean, these people are totally for free speech. Sure. Leon County School Board unanimously approved its LGBTQ inclusive school guide after an extended debate on Tuesday night, the Tallahassee Democrat reports. The document includes provision requiring parents to be notified if their child participates in physical education or goes to an overnight school trip with a person who is quote-unquote open about their gender identity. Upon notification or determination of a student who is open about their gender identity, parents of the affected students will be notified of reasonable accommodation options available according to the policy. God, they are really trying to get around BS law. And it takes work. The state already needs at least 9,000 educators, and smears against LGBTQ plus teachers will contribute to the shortage. Carlos Guillermo mentioned. They're saying that teachers whom people love are grooming children and that our teachers are sexualizing them. Which is not projection by all the child rapists in the Republican Party. He believes the Republican narrative around teachers has prompted people to abandon the profession. They're all baseless accusations that have absolutely zero merits and are having a demoralizing effect on the teacher. I mean, they don't want people. So, yeah, I didn't realize this. They covered the having to hide the spouses. So, police have launched an investigation over a video that appears to show a man claiming to be an off-duty police officer pinning a 14-year-old to the ground with his knee on the boy's back. If police officers aren't bad enough, you also have people claiming to be police officers. As Fox 32 Chicago reported, the footage shows an unidentified white man who says he's an off-duty cop pinning down the teen, who is Puerto Rican, and accusing him of stealing his son's bike. Chicago police have since confirmed that an internal investigation has been opened. In a post shared on Facebook, the child's mother, Nicole Nieves, said the incident happened on July 1st. She said her son tried to move a bike that was blocking the sidewalk. That's when the man accused him of trying to steal a bicycle, even though he had his own bike with him at the time. The adult did not use words, he used force. He used his hands, grabbed her son's wrist, body slammed him, and held him down with his knee to forcibly restrain him. Regardless of the circumstances, getting physical with a minor as an adult for any reason other than self-defense is unacceptable. Niaz believes the attack was racially motivated because her son, who's Puerto Rican, has darker skin and long curly hair. We've talked to our 3 Puerto Rican boys about this moment for years, she continued. We can't possibly put into words how we're feeling. Disgust, anger, frustration, outrage, fear, and sadness, which has been a perpetual mood since the Supreme Court ruling. Prior to the footage, man allegedly seized the child by the wrist, pushed him to the ground, and trapped him with his knee. The family said they will speak out about the incident further when they confer with legal counsel. So, because Hobby Lobby is trying to be the worst, apparently, a part-time Hobby Lobby clerk in Kansas needed her fully trained service dog to do her work and that ultimately got her fired, according to federal officials. Now the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has filed a lawsuit against the National Craft Retailer in District of Kansas. The EEOC alleges Hobby Lobby violated the ADA, the American with Disabilities. The female worker, identified as SC, suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety, according to the lawsuit filed on June 30th. Those conditions are included under the ADA. Well, gosh darn. If those are included under the ADA, I probably have all three of those. Hobby Lobby is already the worst, yeah. SC began working with Hobby Lobby and Olaf in August of 2020. She worked as a cashier and in the seasonal home accents and floral departments a little over a month after she started. Officials say she told her managers she was getting a medical service dog to help with symptoms related to her condition. She submitted an official letter for a mental health provider, then met with the human resources to discuss the request. According to the lawsuit, SC received a denial letter from HR in mid-October. Due to identified safety hazards and the overall nature of business, SC may not utilize the service animal while cashiering or unloading freight and stocking, the denial letter states. An HR specialist told her she couldn't bring her service dog to work because of safety precautions, the lawsuit states. He told SC it was a safety hazard because someone could be allergic to the dog. Someone might trip over the dog, or the dog might break something. This is contrary to the Kansas store's policies for customers with service dogs. Shoppers can bring service dogs and other dogs despite the alleged safety risks. Yeah, and when she returned to work, she brought her dog and renewed her request for reasonable accommodations. According to the lawsuit, the manager sent her home. Her manager told her that if she could not work without her service dog, it would be considered job abandonment. She was fired 3 days later for job abandonment, the lawsuit states. That's about the speed at which I got fired. I got fired from 3M. I got fired from 3M on. I got told of alleged issues on Wednesday. I was fired on Friday. Which that's definitely not sus. No, definitely not them covering things so they don't have to pay another employee for a violation of workplace safety, an OSHA violation, workplace safety OSHA violation, which occurred because they don't want to fire the manager who's been there longer, been there forever. So, the Supreme Court allows Louisiana to cut black voting power in half. Now, I had talked, I don't think it was on this show, I think on my main channel, Ozma in the Dark on YouTube, on last Monday, or not yesterday, or if you watched this on Rainbow Shelter News a couple days ago, Monday. No, the Monday before that. I covered a story, or I covered a Supreme Court ruling that was saying that states' rights to determine voter ID laws. Basically, voter ID laws are fine, even though they've been previously ruled as violating the discrimination, because oftentimes they're set up in such a way to make it so any racial minority is less able to vote. Jinx Tiamat, we what? Anyways, this trend continued Tuesday when the court ruled to allow Louisiana to move ahead with a redistricting plan that had been stopped for being racially biased. The Supreme Court's decision allows Louisiana move forward with its plan for racially based gerrymandering, an outcome that may impact black voters not only in that state, but in other places around the country as well. Because racist gerrymandering is now considered okay by the Supreme Court. I hate the Supreme Court. Anyways, at issue was a Republican-authored plan to redraw Louisiana congressional district map. Such efforts to dilute the vote of racial minorities are forbidden by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but it's not like the Supreme Court cares about that. Especially in states with a history of discriminatory voting practices. It was on this basis that federal courts had issued an injunction against the state, preventing it from implementing the new biased map. The Supreme Court overruled these previous rulings, thus allowing Louisiana to move forward with the new map as the 2022 election year. Typo? Wait, what was it a typo for? Was it me? E? D? C? 3? Anyways, I'm just being a brat, sorry. E? Sorry, I'll stop. Supreme Court continues to undermine black voting rights. The Louisiana ruling fits into a pattern for the Supreme Court working in recent years to gut the Voting Rights Act and to allow policies that are detrimental to the black vote to black voting power. This process began in 2013 when the court's conservative majority voted to essentially eliminate the pre-clearance provision of the Voting Rights Act. Pre-clearance meant that states with a history of racial discrimination voting had to get prior approval before changing voting laws, and that such changes would be evaluated based on their racial impact. Which made voting, if you're black, harder. Reload time? Don't understand. Typo reload time. Anyways. The multi-state Republican assault on black voting continues, with no new voting rights laws coming from Congress. Supreme Court and various Republican-dominated state governments continue to dismantle pre-existing voting protections because they've been stripping rights. If you're black, trans, LGBTQ, or just a woman, that sounds awful. If you're assigned female at birth, you're fucked. Just all of this stuff. Never mind all, okay? Okay, well, if everything's okay, cool. The ruling for Louisiana is similar to the Supreme Court's decision in a similar case in Alabama earlier this year, where the Republican-controlled government also cut power of the state's black voters in half through a gerrymandered map. Today's one-page ruling indicated that the Supreme Court may consider both the Louisiana and Alabama cases later this fall, but allowing both states to proceed until then shows a willingness to abide by the racial gerrymandering currently being practiced. As other states such as Florida also work to eliminate majority black districts, the Supreme Court's decision signals that such schemes will become the new status quo in GOP-dominated parts of the country. God, I hate the Supreme Court. So, I saw this story in a few places, but I like this headline better. Hateful bigot nearly sets himself on fire trying to set fire to town's pride flag. So apparently, someone's been setting fire to pride flags in Lansing, Michigan. They keep getting replaced. He keeps setting them on fire. And it appears that he almost set himself on fire. Several flags have been sawed off, and the torching of the flag was something we knew could happen, but never thought we'd see, Wright said. Monica Wright being someone important. My brain glitched out there for a moment. Lansing Police Department Chief Ellery Sosby told WILX authorities are still searching for the man, and the police are looking to see if the hateful incident is linked to a series of pride flag disappearances in the area. Probably. Sosby vowed the police will seek the appropriate prosecution for any of these crimes. So, black man wrongfully arrested after cops confuse him for a white man receives only $90K in settlement. Shane Brown, a black man who was arrested during traffic stop in 2020 after officers mistook him for a white person with a similar name. Sure, they mistook him. They weren't just looking for an excuse to arrest a black man. God, I hate the police. Has now prevailed in his lawsuit against the Las Vegas Police Department. According to 8 News Now, Brown will receive $90,000 as part of a settlement with 2 Las Vegas area police agents. Henderson Police will pay Brown $25,000, while the Las Vegas Metro Police, which runs the Clark County Detention Center, has been ordered to pay $65,000. Henderson Police pulled Brown over on January 8th, 2020, so more than 2 years ago, for not having his headlights on. That's not... What? It's not like that's a common police thing of pulling over black people for not having their headlights on. Fox 5 Vegas reports Brown, who was 23 years old at the time, didn't have his identification. However, video footage proved that the young man provided his name, social security number, and his social security card. Police performed records check during the traffic stop and found a felony warrant for Shane Neil Brown, a 49-year-old white man who had skipped court while facing charges for ownership or possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. Yes, I'm sure it was just a mistake that they mistook a black man, a 23-year-old black man, for a 49-year-old white man. They weren't just looking to arrest black people. I'm not a felon. I didn't commit a felony. I was trying to plead to anyone who would listen to let everyone know, hey, you can do a double check. Or, hey, can you do a double check? Because, police then proceeded to arrest the 23-year-old who spent 2 days in the Henderson Detention Center and then 4 days in the Clark County Detention Center. 6 days after the traffic stop, a public defender told the court that the wrong Shane Brown was in custody. I didn't know what was going to happen to me because it seemed, from my perspective, that they were convinced that I was this guy. I was a felon, Brown said in January, according to 8 News Now. It seemed like they got their guy and no one would listen to me. As Blavity previously reported, the black man originally seeking $500,000 in damages after accusing Las Vegas and Henderson police of violating his civil rights. Yeah, it's BS that he was arrested. It's BS that he didn't get more, but at least he was able to get a settlement. So, yeah, definitely racially motivated. All of what happened. So, Michigan parks, beaches are improving access to visitors with disability. The best type of wheelchair, which is the all-terrain type, can purchase them for. This is an ad. This isn't now an ad for a wheelchair, which I've forgotten the website too. Wait. Now I want to see if I can find the website. Well, whatever. I'm sure a link might appear in chat potentially, but like you can get wheelchairs like that for about $10,000. I know that's all power chairs are expensive, but and I don't know the model of this one. This one looks to potentially be a worse model. I don't know, but anyways. In 1992, Cynthia Barker was taking her 12-year-old daughter Erin on a stroll across a zigzag bridge at Harker Park in Ottawa County, Michigan, when Erin's wheelchair got stuck while turning a corner. Erin had suffered a stroke 4 months earlier that left her paralyzed on one side and with a language disorder. I don't know what they mean by language disorder. God, I hate the framing of this already. Putting her in a position where using a wheelchair would be ideal. But that made a lot of outdoors widely inaccessible. I hadn't figured out that wasn't accessible until I got her wheelchair stuck on it, Cynthia Berger said. When your kid looks at you and goes, really? Really? You thought this was accessible? I felt pretty dumb. And good on you for self-reflection. I'm going to say good on you for that. Fast forward 30 years, and Michigan has made large strides in parks like those Erin went to, more accessible for disabled people. Even after Erin's incident, Hager Park replaced all its bridges to be more accessible. Across the state, there are 28 accessible beach parks, 31 accessible fishing spots, and 34 accessible skiing viewpoints and trails. Now, I don't know what they mean by accessible. Shall we take a look? This is investigation time. We are investigating. Ooh. There appears to be potential very limited accessibility. I can't tell the detailed look. I mean, this picture is limited accessibility, although there are certain amounts of limits, but like Floor not very accessible. Not very accessible. Maybe that's a bird, not accessible. You're gonna tout a place as accessible, at least show accessible parts. Not very accessible. Yeah, I don't know why they're not showing the accessible parts of here. I mean, maybe, obviously no, 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 yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm expecting every area, but like, they're not showing any accessible area. Bike path is not very accessible. Like, you can get places with an all-terrain vehicle. That's not very accessible. I wonder if this is an article where they talk to the parent, but not the disabled person. Because they're not showing anything to even imply that the place is accessible. There we go. Ultimate all-terrain chair. So, yeah, no, it might have been this chair. Actually. But, these wheelchairs are the best. Not a sponsor, by the way. But if you want to be a sponsor, go ahead and reach out to me. Action Track Chairs. I am in Minnesota. I don't use a wheelchair, but I know plenty of people who do. Anyways, yeah, so starting at 14K, so a lot of power chairs that get promoted are like 20K or more. So like, it's cheap, it's very accessible, it makes areas that are not by default accessible more accessible. So like, this, I would not call this sandy area accessible. I would say that she appears to be using an Action Track chair. Not a sponsor. Let's repeat, not a sponsor as much as I wish it was, but like, it appears to be an Action Track chair, which is an all-terrain vehicle. If you use an all-terrain vehicle, you can get places. Wheelchair users everywhere appreciate your support. Oh, thank you. But like, yeah, so you can get in all around in this beach area and many other areas that are not normally, that are generally not very accessible with a power chair like this. That being said, not everybody has that, and they did not appear to show anything especially accessible. So that might be, it makes it seem like it's about as accessible as half the places that call themselves accessible, which is there's maybe an accessible place or two, a small accessible place, and a lot of inaccessible places, because if you're not using a power chair, I'm pretty sure a gravelly road is going to, I think maybe articles referring to rental setup inside. There, not all the beach parks have rental setup. So this one does. Bay Area Brighton Recreation has a beach wheelchair. So I mean, I guess if the beach wheelchair is like one of those chairs, that's actually a good thing. Oh yeah, a lightweight beach access chair, a lightweight all-terrain wheelchair that can also get into the water. Both. Okay, so like about half these parks have a wheelchair like that. Okay, that changes things. Thank you, Jinx Tiamat. Yes, the article might be talking about that. Sorry, I was expecting the worst, because usually is a much worse circumstance with stuff where they're like, oh, just a manual chair to, you know, try to, like a very basic manual chair to try to get everywhere in. If that's the case, then yes. They appear to be providing like I said, if they're providing rentals for chairs like this, then yeah, hell, and that is kind of how they're described. So yeah, if that's the case. Oh, there are about 400 track chairs now throughout Michigan. Maybe I should have read a little bit further. Benefit from track shares. Track shares have allowed him to remain connected to the outdoors. Yeah. So, okay. So it does seem to be a situation more like that. And there's also kayaks. So I take back everything negative I said. It sounds like they're actually doing something good with being able to, you know, allow users to rent chairs like this and do a lot of stuff. This is actually a really good thing. I expect the worst way too much sometimes. Yeah, so they have a setup for kayaking. Progress is good, yeah. So they have a setup for kayaking. They've got rental track chairs. And they have rental track chairs from about half the places. Like, I don't know if it's 100%. I don't know if this is accurate to all places, but it appears to be accurate in about half the places seem to be set up in such a way that full accessibility can be formed. So at least 11 to 15 parks. So federal New York State bills seek to end electric shock treatment for disabled people. So electric shock, still a thing apparently. Felt like it should have ended sometime around One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was released, but people like torturing disabled people. So two recent pieces of legislation are renewing a long-running fight over the practice of using electric shocks on disabled people as a behavior modification tool. So Judge Rotenberg Center, a residential school for kids and adults in Canton, Massachusetts, has ignited controversy for decades over its use of a device that shocks people, disabled people, to prevent what the school describes as dangerous or violent behaviors. Frack JRC. Despite multiple attempts by lawmakers, parents, and disability rights advocates to halt the practice, it remains legal, and the school continues administering electric shocks to roughly 50 adult residents, according to school officials. Proposals pending in New York State legislature and Congress could soon change that. A bill by New York State Senator Jabari Brisport would block the state from sending public money to the school if it continues using the practice, stopping an annual flow of more than $20 million in taxpayer dollars from New York school districts and schools and the state's office for disabled adults that make up a major source of the school's funding. Roughly half of the school's 300 residents are from New York, including 62 students whose tuitions are covered by New York City Education Department after education officials determined they couldn't be served in other public or private schools in the state. Whatever that means. The DOE spent more than $8 million last year on the tuition costs. This is an inhumane practice that every other facility in the U.S. has stopped, says Brisport, whose bill is named after Andre McCollum, a former Rotenberg student who was hospitalized in 2002 at age 18 after being shocked 31 times in a matter of minutes while strapped to a board. Because... So, like, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is supposed to be about a bad mental hospital. It's about how mental hospitals shouldn't run, and to run a school facility that way is inexcusable. The FDA banned the device in 2020, but federal appeals court ruled that the agency didn't have the authority to enact the ban on its own. My God. Oh no, the practice is also fiercely defended by some of the families who describe it as a life-saving last resort treatment that prevents their loved ones from severely injuring themselves or worse. Sorry, Autism Speaks is a good example of an organization that only listens to parents of autistic children. And there are people who care more about people appear normal. Most reputable dog training experts actively campaign to not use these strategies on dogs. Yes, but disabled people are worse than dogs in some people's eyes in society. Parents and administrators of the school argue that the issue should get a full public debate in the Senate, and that banning the device outright would be harmful incursion into personal medical decisions. Well, it's not personal medical decisions. It's like someone else cutting off my arm is not a personal medical decision on my part. It's someone else controlling my body. Like, my daughter will die if they take the electric shock away from us, said the ability to shock my children away from us, said Marcia Shear of Long Island, whose 29-year-old daughter, Samantha, has been at Judge Rotenberg Center since she was 12. Oh, God. Samantha, who has autism, and they administer shock for cries of pain or asking to go to the restroom too much. Yeah, oh my God. No, I'm just gonna close that website. because it just gets into grim defending of electric shock. And everywhere else bans it for a reason. People say conversion therapy works too. Guess what? It doesn't. So, plenty of science and stats and information to suggest that it doesn't. And so just saying that that, you know, it works because it stopped. Jersey is awful and indefensible. Yeah. It's just the, like, it might work to make a kid act like how you want to and melt down in a less damaging way, but a more torturous way. A less damaging way for you or whatever, what might be perceived as a less damaging way, but a more torturous way for the child. Anyway, Akron, Ohio mayor canceled city's 4th of July celebration after police shooting of Jayland Walker. So Akron police have released footage of the fatal incident involving Jayland Walker, a 25-year-old DoorDash driver who was shot, I believe, 100 times. Oh, sorry, 90 times. They fired 90 bullets at him, hitting him 60 times after he allegedly tried to flee during a traffic stop. The body cam video released on Sunday shows officers chasing down Walker and firing multiple shots after surrounding his car as the pursuit came to an end. I believe this tweet from Bishop Talbot Swan. His name is Jayland Walker. 8 Akron, Ohio police cops fired 90 bullets at him, hitting him 60 times throughout his entire body. The cops pulled him over for a traffic violation. He was 25. He was a DoorDash driver. He was unarmed. He was murdered. According to USA Today, Police Chief Stephen Milet said Walker exited the car in a ski mask and appeared to reach toward his waist during a foot chase before turning towards the officers who opened fire. Which I don't believe this story. But sure, the chief also said officers immediately attempted to provide care to Walker after the shooting stopped, but he died at the scene. The video is heartbreaking. It's hard to take in, Mayor Daniel Horgan said to USA Today. Horgan said the 4th of July celebration has been canceled following the shooting. I completely understand that some residents and guests will be disappointed by the decision to cancel the festival this holiday weekend. Independence Day was meant to be a celebration and a time of gathering of friends and family. Unfortunately, I feel strongly this is not the time for a city-led celebration. NAACP President Derek Johnson also condemned the officers. It wasn't self-defense, it wasn't an accident in the heat of the moment, it was murder, point blank. The black man was killed, struck more than 60 times by 90 fired bullets for a possible traffic violation. This doesn't happen to white people. The body cam footage showed a gun on the front seat of Walker's car. Milet also said the video appeared to show a flash of a gun from the car during the chase. Walker, however, was unarmed as he fled the car and ran from the police, the chief said. Milet asked if officers overreacted during the chase. It's difficult to watch and shocking, he said, adding that he's not going to pass judgment until investigation completes. Yeah. 8 officers who are involved with the shooting are now placed on paid administrative leave. They like to put officers on paid administrative leave when they murder people. Yeah, it's... I struggle to get, like, paid days off for paid sick days off. And apparently my problem was not working for the police, because apparently police just get paid days off for murder. So, wheelchair users want new money spent on safety. On Sunday afternoon in May 2021, Patsy Ellison left her Knoxville, Tennessee apartment in her motorized wheelchair and started to cross a nearby street, as she often did. She never made it. Even though there was a stop sign, a Dodge Ram pickup truck turning into the intersection struck and killed Ellison, who was 62. The driver told police he didn't see her in the roadway. As someone who's never been struck by a car as a pedestrian, never, definitely not on the same day that Stephen Hawking died, by someone turning into an intersection in an SUV. Definitely can't relate to aspects of that, though I did not die. I suffered minor injuries. It's actually, well, I say minor injuries. The traumatic brain injury is a bit of a major injury. We were just devastated. She's such a good person. It's still hard. I have a 5-year-old and he talks about it every day. He's still traumatized. This is how generational trauma builds up. Shit like this. Desert said her great aunt who used the wheelchair because of knee problems that made it harder for her to walk more than a few steps. Which that sounds similar to a childhood friend of mine who uses a wheelchair. He doesn't use a power chair, but yeah. Had a beloved dog named Spartacus. Oh. And was well known in the neighborhood, where she regularly visited a convenience store to buy hot Cheetos and Slim Jim. Oh, Spartacus is the best name for a dog. I am Spartacus. But yeah, the streets can be dangerous for people who use wheelchairs. Some are forced to roll along the street because the sidewalk is broken. By the way, that's a problem for walking bike riding, sorry, not walking as well. I live near a golf course. I'm just like hardcore doxing myself today, apparently. I live near a golf course, and it's just, there's no sidewalk next to the golf course. It's just a bunch of road. It's part of a problem that occurred with segregating cities. So it's so poor people don't go around the rich person golf course as easily. And since disabled people are more likely to be poor, they're more likely to be in less accessible spots. But yeah, uneven or non-existent, yeah. Some have to cross busy roads with multiple lanes. Motorists, particularly those in SUVs and large pickup trucks, may not see them because they sit low. Disability rights and highway safety advocates say some of the funding from the new $1.2 trillion federal infrastructure law, which includes $11 billion for transportation safety programs, could be spent on curb ramps, more accessible sidewalks, and roads engineered to slow down traffic and provide safe crossings for disabled people. The law includes the Safe Streets and Roads for All. I know I've got hiccups. The law includes the Safe Streets and Roads for All initiative, which will provide $5 billion in grants to local governments over 5 years to support projects and strategies to reduce crashes and fatalities. I think it's like a 50-50 chance of a fatality in a circumstance similar to that, but yeah. Pedestrian wheelchair users are more than a third more likely to be killed in crashes than non-wheelchair. Nearly half the deaths occurred at intersections, and in more than 3/4 of the fatalities, driver used no crash avoidance maneuver such as braking. But yeah, fatalities continue to mount, and they start. But yes, so much needs to be reworked. So, with infrastructure, just all around. Texas Board of Education strikes down call to rebrand slavery in classrooms as involuntary relocation. Someone tried to downplay it. A proposal to teach slavery to second graders in Texas as involuntary relocation has been struck down in a unanimous decision by the State Board of Education. See, Texas isn't all bad, just mostly bad. In terms of the government, not the people. Especially with gerrymandering, it's easy to feel hopeless in a lot of states. So Senate Bill 3 was released last year to go against quote-unquote critical race theory, which is taught to the collegiate level and has to do with racism as a social construct that continues to impact institutions today, since racism continues to prevail. You know, like police officers shooting a black man 90 times for a traffic stop. But yeah, so they were trying to soften the blow, and oh, now I'm tired. Apparently I'm all over the place today in terms of whether I have the hiccups or I'm tired or I'm comfy or where I might have to. Well, I mean, I'll definitely have to take a quick break after this, but so June 30th, Washington, D.C. news story. Medical aid in dying, states debate right to die laws, include a photo from a not dead yet protest held at a press conference held by assisted suicide proponents, which was covered in this blog in early May. Basically, most people who get assisted suicide performed on them are not doing so because of constant pain or physical distress. It usually comes from motivation to do with social factors of feeling like a burden, feeling useless, stuff like that. So I mean that's a problem if how it's been enacted has historically been to kill disabled people for being less desirable. And doctors oftentimes feel more comfortable performing assisted suicide with less restrictions on disabled people than on non-disabled people. More harm than good, the case against physician suicide. If someone is diagnosed with cancer but declines chemotherapy, should a doctor help them die? People suffering from mental illness like anorexia nervosa be able to end their lives with a prescription? Questions like these that fuel opposition to physician-assisted dying, or what some opponents call assisted suicide. They grant broad immunities to doctors and others involved. The only real data is reported by their prescribing doctor. There's no meaningful oversight. So, the American Medical Association hasn't changed its stance that it does more harm than good. Yeah, and without the oversight, you have to be competent at the time of the request, not the time of ingestion. Not a single one of them has a requirement that a third party be present at the time of ingestion to ensure competence and that it's voluntary. People's reasons for assisted suicide are disability issues, the loss of autonomy, the stress of not being able to do the same things, feeling like a burden to others. Those are kind of concerns we understand very well. And that is the concern. Warn that aid in dying laws can lead to unintended life or death consequences that set up a change and a setup of expectations in societies and in a healthcare system that already sees people like me as a bit too expensive. And this is a problem in we see in Canada. Doctors also sometimes discuss cost reduction with patients, yeah. But like we see this in Canada, which would be saying that if someone has anorexia nervosa, that's enough reason for them to get assisted suicide. Because mental illness is the only requirement for assisted suicide, or at the very least that's the proposal being made in Canada right now. So seeing where this leads is incredibly concerning. Tesla. While other people while fanboys are busy sucking Tesla's dick, Tesla is currently facing another lawsuit over alleged racist harassment at the company's factories. I know this is a shock, but rich South African person who grew up during apartheid, Elon Musk, sorry, I should have said they're sucking Elon Musk's dick because they don't care about Tesla outside the fact that they believe that he founded it. Anyways, a new lawsuit against Tesla. Multiple employees say they were targeted with frequent racist abuse and harassment at the Elon Musk-owned company factories. The suit, according to a report from Reuters, was filed with 15 current or former workers, all of whom are black, and say they were made subject of racist slurs. One alleged incident involved a supervisor who harassed one of the plaintiffs, including by referring to him as a zebra because he was neither black nor white. Just let that level of racism sink in. Another alleged incident is said to have seen I can't read that. Anyways, another alleged incident is said to have seen a former employee being told by another it was rare for black workers to last long with the company. So a newly announced suit, which also alleges that one employee was demoted after missing work over COVID-19 is one of several legal actions taken against Tesla, alleging similar behavior. Just this week, for example, a judge ordered a new trial in a former elevator operator's discrimination lawsuit. That elevator operator was being referred to as through the N-word repeatedly in that particular lawsuit against Tesla. And that was because it was reduced to $15 million by a judge award. So, queer women and trans folk need abortion rights too. We're being left out of the conversation. So obviously, bi women, anyone who's assigned female at birth, needs to have the right to an abortion, and even the rare few who aren't assigned female at birth but are capable of becoming pregnant should have the right to an abortion. It's not inherently just women, but a lot of the focus is on specifically heterosexual relationships and heterosexual. Given society is the way it is, it's not a surprise that it's so hetero focused. But because trans men aren't spoken about as much when it comes to this. Non-binary people might need abortions. And obviously LGBTQ rights are going to be attacked next. They've outright stated that they're going to go after, or try to, at the very least, go after anti-sodomy laws, they're trying to reenact anti-sodomy laws. They're trying to take away same-sex marriage, and they're trying to take away right to contraception. Which, for the purpose of causing it so poor people have to use more dangerous methods if they happen to need an abortion or to try to have contraception just to live life in a more genuine way. And that's hormone support, or HRT, get lumped in with abortion too often. Yes, that's another factor. And I think that's probably the precedent, or I think that's the reasoning for the Alabama law. So, trans sports bans will endanger all women, explains swimmer Schuler Balar. Ban on trans women in sports aren't about fairness, explains the athlete. Miller, who was the first trans man to compete in National Collegiate Athletic Association, top Division I, was disappointed by the International Swimming Federation decision to effectively ban trans women from elite competition. He was especially shocked by the situation that athletes must have become medical transition prior to the age of 12. So they want to ban the ability to start transition before the age of 12, but also make it so you can't do anything that might get you famous unless it's a catch-22 type situation that's being set up. Puberty can start anywhere between 10 and 14. He told Pink News testosterone doesn't peak for folks who are assigned male at birth until their early 20s, so it's fascinating, confusing, and disappointing that they chose that number. As Baylor points out, the age limit is especially difficult considering anti-trans legislation that makes it increasingly difficult to acquire gender-affirming care like puberty blockers. In the United States, we've got multiple bills banning medical transitions before the age of 18, he said. if you're illegalizing transition before 18, but mandating that you must have transitioned before 12, it's a lose-lose scenario. Despite several FINA board members claiming that the decision was based on quote-unquote what scientists are saying, Baylor is confused as to what research they were pointing to. So, yeah, and they oftentimes say, like, male puberty is permanent or whatever, or puberty is a permanent change that can't be affected ever later. And it's like, but there are top tier trans men athletes. Like, that doesn't fit in with that reasoning. There are people who exist who it shouldn't be possible for them to exist. That's a problem if your reasoning requires that sort of thing. Or requires people who literally exist to not exist, who it's impossible to exist. Yeah, anyways, oftentimes regulations like these are implemented under the notion that they protect women's spaces. However, Baylor says the policy will endanger all women. People say, well, this is just about fairness, but it's not. It's about concentrating power in white, cisgender, straight, male elite, he said. It enforces the policing of women's categories and women's bodies in order to exclude trans ones. Or intersex people. Castor Semenya is being attacked for being too different. That's been a perpetual problem. You have to police the category in order to exclude trans women. After the approval of the policy, which passed with 71% of the vote from 152 members, FINA said that this was only a first step towards full inclusion for trans athletes. Now, this isn't their decision sets up a separate but equal special category for trans athletes. Not only does Baylor disagree with this concept, but he believes the language that the International Swimming Body is using is ridiculous. I think it's quite manipulative and inaccurate to call it an inclusive policy because it's exactly the opposite. It's manipulative to call this the gender inclusive policy because it's quite literally the opposite, saying that we'll put you in this other category that's exactly the definition of the opposite of conclusion. That is exclusion by definition. I was the first openly trans athlete in D1 men's sports in the US, and when I started speaking about my experience, I was giving speeches. I was giving training. I was giving consulting information to folks, and it started slow, but then it was a lot. But yeah, fuck the FINA decision. It's annoying. So, anti-LGBTQ discrimination is on the rise as attacks on the community increase. 70% of LGBTQ people say they face discrimination in their daily lives, up from the past year. GLAAD released an alarming report on Wednesday about LGBTQ Americans who feel they still face discrimination in their daily lives. 7 out of 10 LGBTQ Americans state they face discrimination when interacting with their local community. That's up 11% from their report last year. With all the anti-LGBTQ laws, a lot of people, I think, have become more comfortable with their crueler attitudes. Misinformation and false rhetoric from anti-LGBTQ lawmakers have real-life consequences, Ellis said on Wednesday, and give a permission slip to discriminate against LGBTQ people and target them. Yeah, that's generally the case, and I've already mentioned the deaths. Yeah. I think I might be burnt out on talking about LGBTQ news. So, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, fails to report on making federal websites accessible to disabled people. So, about a quarter of Americans live with a disability, but nearly a third of the most popular federal websites are difficult for disabled people to access. It's been 10 years since the Department of Justice filed a biennial report on the federal government's compliance and accessibility standards for information technology, a bipartisan group of concerned senators say. The reports are required by Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. On Thursday, a group of 7 senators sent a letter to the department asking for the DOJ to once again issue these reports, and the lawmakers want to know why the agency hasn't filed them. The letter not only has bipartisan support, but also the support of chairs and ranking members of 3 Senate committees. To have no reporting in a decade is just unacceptable, said one of the senators. It's critical because of the barriers that disabled people face all the time when it comes to full access that they should have, the resources of the federal government, and the resources especially that are provided online. Under Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, the federal government is required to make all its websites accessible to disabled people, and to publicly report on its compliance with accessibility standards every 2 years. So, it's only been 5 times that amount. The latest DOJ report from 2012 had identified substantial gaps in Section 508 compliance across the federal government, and included recommendations for agencies to meet their accessibility requirement. But yeah, it's... I don't know how the DOJ can be that bad. Social Security benefits expected to increase significantly. So, the Social Security and Supplemental Security Income beneficiaries could see their monthly payments rise again next year by the largest amount in decades, experts say. I get the feeling that's still far lower than it should be, but sure. Thanks to growing inflation, the automatic cost of living adjustment, or COLA, that benefits recipients to receive annually could be much larger than usual. It's likely we're going to have a COLA closer to 8% than 0.8%. Okay, but like, how much? Although now it's in October of next year with the, I don't know the amount. This isn't an amount. It isn't like a specific amount. I know, someone I know receives like a grand a month, which is way less than what's needed. So if it's 8%, that's like $1,080, barely enough to live. And that's one of the problems with a lot of disability related stuff. They want barely or not enough to live. Because disabled people are oftentimes not cared about. So, House Democrats introduced a trans Bill of Rights. So, Democratic members of the House of Representatives Tuesday announced a resolution that would codify federal protections for trans people. Lawmakers are calling the proposal Trans Bill of Rights. It would protect employees from gender discrimination by codifying the Supreme Court's Bostock versus v. Clayton County decision in 2020. The court ruled that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protects employees against discrimination based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. It would also ensure that trans and non-binary people are not discriminated against or prosecuted for their gender identity and expression, providing a comprehensive framework for protecting them. Now, that sounds real nice and will probably be helpful to a decent degree, but they need to try to stop the stuff going on right now, because this won't matter and this will be shot down very easily by the Supreme Court or the Senate. So, TikToker goes viral for eye-opening videos about restaurant accessibility, in that most restaurants are not accessible. Now, I am aware of an accessible restaurant nearby, but I feel like it's only accessible because there's an accessible house not far from me. So I feel like they pushed it to becoming accessible. Even then, it's somewhat questionable. But yes, Taylor Lindsay Noel has gone viral on TikTok and Instagram for her honest reviews on accessible restaurants in Canada. So, uses a power wheelchair, started posting her accessibility by Tay videos after her friend got engaged and started to look for wedding venues. Lindsay Noel was in the bridal party, so her friend kept her and her needs in mind during the venue search. In her videos, Lindsay Noel gives each restaurant accessibility and experience rating. She also shares clips of her navigating the space in her wheelchair, aspect of her videos that she says moves viewers the most. People relate to visual content. You can write a review and say there is a step there, but when you see someone with the barrier, and that's where they can stop, it brings it all together. That's why I love the video format. She shared that she's surprised her TikToks have garnered tens of thousands of views, including her video showing the Tiki Room in Toronto, which racked up 1.6 million views. Some of the responses have been incredible. People, whether you're disabled or not, have related to the video and have been quite shocked to see how inaccessible the city can be, and the experiences and the pitfalls that people with access needs face when places are not accessible. Yeah, when places are not accessible, they're essentially saying, we don't want your kind here. I am not personally surprised by how inaccessible the city is, because I've experienced it every day since I've been in a wheelchair. But I've been amazed by how many people are not even in wheelchairs relate to it, whether they have strollers or just recently broke a leg and they're in crutches for the first time or have difficulty walking long distance. It makes a huge difference. I've had so many experiences where I show up to a place that says it's accessible and I get there and it's not, and I feel embarrassed or I feel rejected and don't want to go out for the next few weeks. She's adding that she hopes to review additional places. It's not going to be exclusive to restaurants. I want to do experiences and I'm excited to start traveling again. So, apparently I wanted to torture myself with the news today. Tory Minister Nadine Dorries, instructs sports chiefs to start excluding trans women. so must take swimming's lead and limit women's sports to people born of the female sex. Doris told representatives from football, cricket, rugby, tennis, athletics, and other sports Tuesday afternoon that trans women competing alongside cis players is quote unquote inherently unfair. Quote, we can't pretend that sex doesn't have a direct impact on a person's athletic performance, tweeted Doris of the Round Table. Asking women and teenage girls to compete against someone who was biologically born a male is inherently unfair. Those unfairnesses are not seen in children, but oh yeah, she says teenage and older, but still. So today made my position absolutely clear. I expect sporting bodies to follow the policy that competitive women's sports must be reserved for people born of the female sex. Don't factor in trans men at all. Because it's not like trans men have been fighting to compete in men's sports because trans men can compete against cis men, and the minister said, quote unquote, fairness must be sport governing bodies' top priority when it comes to deciding how, if at all, trans athletes are eligible to compete nationally. You know, get them out of sports and then get them out of visibility and then get them out of society. This is not... What? Eugenics? What? Yeah, we talked about Fina enough. So, the Green Party in UK sparks searing backlash after local branch says gender-critical views are welcome. So, this is one of those things where the Labour Party has not fought for trans rights, and the Green Party looked like it was going to fight for trans rights. However, the statement by the Brent Green Party. Brent Green Party wishes to be a welcoming and safe place for all, including trans and non-binary people, including those with a range of opinions, including gender-critical views and pro-trans rights views. We urge everyone in the Green Party to treat fellow members with respect and empathy, including those with whom you have a difference of opinion. So, that's not that sort of middle of the road approach that they like to take and stuff like this is it's cringe. It's very cringe. So the thing is, gender critical views, quote unquote gender critical views, are inherently views that involve not treating members of the any trans and non-binary people with respect or empathy. Gender critical views treat non-binary people as trans and non-binary people as mentally ill stains on society. It's not just a difference of opinion. I mean, it is technically a difference of opinion in that one wants you to stop existing, and the other opinion is you want to continue to exist. It's sort of like the I want to live, and someone being like, I want to murder you, and you being like, and then apparently the Brent Green Party statement would be like, well, can't you just see both sides? Treat each other with respect by your differing opinions? Like, no, there are lines. Generally, there are lines if you want to have a thing. This pretty much sums it up. You can't have it both ways. You can either be welcoming towards trans and non-binary people or welcoming of TERFs. The very notion that you try to accept both is ridiculous and only serves to further hurt people being marginalized, in this case, trans and non-binary. You can't tolerate intolerance if all you're doing is legitimizing hate of trans people. Fuck off, my rights aren't a difference of opinion. Do you respect a difference of opinion on the rights and validity of any other? Yeah. So, in more awful UK news, the Isle of... Because UK is competing with the US for worst country. Like we're both trying to slide as far downhill as possible. So the Isle of Man, but this is technically good news because the Isle of Man has finally granted pardons to queer men who are convicted under anti-sodomy laws that haven't been in place since 1992. So people have been in prison for 30 years for a crime that wasn't a crime anymore. Fun. Those affected, however, will have to apply to the Department of Home Affairs to have any previous conviction completely removed from their record. Despite England and Wales decriminalizing homosexuality in 1967, the Isle of Man did not follow suit until 1992. It's just... Fuck that. So... I know the Tory party says that racism doesn't exist in the UK, but a black UK schoolboy forced to the ground, handcuffed in mistaken search and stop and search. Stop and search. The greatest way for police to be able to racially target youth. A 14-year-old schoolboy has said that he feared he would die after he was forced to the ground and handcuffed by police outside a tram in Croydon. Deshaun Joseph was stopped by police after officers said they matched the description of a suspect in a nearby robbery. I wonder if like the 39-year-old white man. I wonder if it was a situation like that. The officers who were searching for a black youth in a blue hoodie handcuffed Deshaun, who was wearing a gray top over his school uniform, and forced him to face down on the ground outside Black Horse Road tram station, South London. Fearing for his life, the teenager, who suffered from asthma, was able to shout his mother's phone number to a passerby, and she arrived at the scene to find her son in handcuffs. Speaking to ITV News, Miss Joseph said she feared her son would be the next George Floyd. It's every parent's worst nightmare, she said. The same old story, every black boy fits the description. There's no excuse for what they did to my son and the excessive force they used on a 14-year-old boy. 14-year-old boy. Police say the school pupil was thrown to the ground after he verbally abused officers and became obstructive. Sure. Police always say. Officers patrol each day to prevent violence and seek out those who would do others harm. Chief Inspector Richard Burns from the Violent Crime Task Force said officers were responding to reports of a robbery involving a young victim and had to conduct their on-the-street investigation under very challenging circumstances After some onlookers began directing verbal abuse towards them, all officers understand that their actions are subject to scrutiny. He had an initial review of the incident, including body-worn video, has been conducted by the Met Police. They're pretty bad. Director of Professional Standards. Yeah, the no misconduct was apparent. Yeah, that happened when slurs were shouted by police officers too. What was that case? There's a case with like a lot of footage of the Met Police doing awful stuff, and the way the UK government is trying to fight against people's ability to protest is not a sign that that can't be a sign that the Tory party is trying to move the UK government towards an authoritarian regime. So, on a lighter note, I knew I had lighter notes in here somewhere. I apparently spaced them out too far. Pride goers hack anti-LGBTQ plus protesters' sound system with camp disco anthem, "It's Raining Men." Revelers from Pride in London have claimed that a group of anti-LGBTQ plus protesters had their sound system hacked with an iconic rendition of "It's Raining Men. Hallelujah, it's raining men." In a TikTok from London Pride's parade on Saturday, a social media user claimed somebody hacked into the anti-gay protester speaker and started playing "It's Raining Men," while another TikTok commentator claimed that the anti-Pride protester system wasn't hacked. People merely blasted the song next to them. The original poster confirmed that at least you couldn't hear them over the joyful sounds of the parade. Pride in London, which took place the day after the 50th anniversary of UK's first Pride March, did attract a small group of anti-LGBTQ plus protesters. However, they're not only drowned out by music, but made fun of by the cast of Netflix's Heartstopper. Yeah. It's raining men. Anyways, queer couple getting engaged on Tube during Pride in London sparks fierce debate. What is this debate? I don't know. So queer Twitter users have jumped to the defense of a couple who got engaged on the Tube during Pride in London. The couple lit up the London Underground during Saturday's Pride celebrations during their engagement with fellow passengers in a busy tube carriage. A TikTok video showed one half of the couple getting down on bended knee while onlookers cheered. But the happy moment was tainted for some by TikTok influencer Max Belegde, who called the proposal a violation while filming it and said they would be fuming if that was me. A queer proposal. Belegde posted this video showing a queer proposal during London Pride on Twitter, began getting backlash rightfully, and took it down in response, but kept it on TikTok. Not remorseful or apologetic, just trying to dodge scrutiny. Many took to Twitter to deplore those who disapproved of the two people expressing their love during Pride. One person who commented on the video was Connor Collins, who said the person who proposed. One person who commented on the video was visual artist Connor Collins. So the person who proposed is their cousin. They had the courage to come out, and I'm happy that friends of special in their lives, but also have been able to find they are too, Collins wrote. But you took what was a lovely moment for both of them instead of just being happy. You thought it right to mock a queer couple. on the video and shared it for all your viewers. The absolute monster. I see having apologized for this would be the tiniest gesture of oh, it's Connor's Collins' cousin. I was trying to figure out what they meant by that. Apologized, which would be the tiniest gesture of making things right. But yeah. So, disabled activists have pledged to push for changes to the government's new draft mental health bill because it's set to retain fundamental health human rights breaches. So, Health and Social Care Secretary Sajid Javid this week published a draft bill which he said was a significant moment in supporting people with serious mental health issues. The government says the legislation will ensure greater choice and autonomy for patients in a mental health crisis, address the disproportionate number of people of color detained under the Mental Health Act, and improve the treatment of people with learning difficulties and autistic people, and of people with mental distress in the criminal justice system. The draft bill, which applies to England and Wales, will reform the Mental Health Act of 1983, will now be examined in detail by a parliamentary committee before the government publishes a final version. It is too soon for disabled people to ignore organizations and grassroots groups to have carried out detailed analysis of the draft bill, but campaigners say it's already clear it will not provide human rights for people with a mental health diagnosis. The draft bill is based on white paper published in January 2021, and although many of last year's proposals were welcomed, the white paper built on recommendations made by Sir Simon Wesley's independent review of the Mental Health Act in 2018, which was criticized for falling significantly short of recommending full human rights for people in mental distress. Dorothy Gould, it was clear already that the draft bill retains fundamental human rights breaches and that there are too many loopholes in proposed measures that have been seen as a step forward. And she said that the draft bill would still significantly breach the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And she also said it was way out of date with other exciting international developments, such as the recent call from the World Health Organization to implement steps needed if there is to be an end to coercive practices such as forced admission and forced treatment, and for mental health care to be grounded in human rights-based approach and located in the community. So, yeah. I know it's shocked that the UK would do a bad. So the Department for Work and Pensions has yet to agree to sign a legal agreement with the equality watchdog after serious concerns were raised about its treatment of disabled people claiming benefits. So this has been like an ongoing problem in the UK. EHRC said in April that it hoped the DWP would sign a legally binding Section 23 agreement by this summer and that it expected it to be in place shortly. The agreement, EHRC said, would commit disability work Department of Work and Pensions to an action plan to meet the needs of customers with mental health mental health impairments and learning disabilities. But the Work and Pension Secretary, Therese Coffey, told MPs on the Work and Pensions Select Committee yesterday that an agreement had yet to be signed. She appeared to suggest that an agreement might not be reached. PWP is currently engaged in a battle with Disability News Service about releasing 2 batches of IPRs, the internal process review. Yeah, it's just been like a whole mess in terms of people being able to get work and all this stuff, and it seems like it's not being corrected soon. House of Lords Committee has been told how the huge barrier created by social care charges is forcing disabled people into poverty. I know, shocked. Forcing disabled people into poverty? That isn't a consistent thing that happens all over the world. Anyways, Andy McCabe, who himself uses council-funded support, told the Adult Social Care Committee that the charges being demanded by local authorities were excessive and not sustainable for a lot of disabled people. McCabe, a social worker, was given evidence to the committee as part of its inquiry into adult social care. He said the amount of money being demanded of disabled people as a contribution to their support packages was causing a lot of mental anguish and was morally wrong. He said that people in this situation were being asked to pay between 80 and 120 pounds a week for their means-tested benefits, which that's like $100 to $200 a week. I'm bad with the conversion, and it changes from time to time, which can't be right. And he suggested that all care charges should be scrapped, as has happened with Hammersmith and Fulham Council in London. The committee also heard from consultant Tricia Nicole, another user of social care, both for herself and her 2 children, who said people should stop viewing the need for social care as a disaster and see it instead as the enabler it is. She said, whatever you call it is an enabler for me to have a good life, enabler for my kids to live a really great life. But yeah, calls for strict laws to ensure minimum proportion of homes are built to accessible housing standards. Called for action to address excessive delays in the disabled facilities grant system, which has an average waiting time of 5 or 6 months. So sounds like the NHS for hormone treatments. For an adaptation to be installed once it has been approved by the local council. He said, that's actually a really long time to live without a toilet. And that seems to sum up that. So, because the UK immigration system is trying to keep trying to keep up with the ICU organization, which the ICE organization are very sympathetic to Nazi ideals, but the UK is trying to compete with that. A gay man is deported from UK to Nigeria. Despite fears, he'll face near certain death. So, deporting gay people to countries where it's not legal for him to exist. So, a gay man has been deported from the UK to Nigeria despite his having received numerous death threats. Adeni Raji, 48, was among at least 10 refugees on a Home Office charter flight to Lagos, Nigeria, that took off from Birmingham airport on Wednesday night. He arrived in Britain in 2017 from Nigeria to escape death threats that were being sent to him on social media. Being gay is illegal in Nigeria and punishable by 14 years in jail, by up to 14 years in jail, sorry. Now, the government's own foreign travel advice for the country states that homosexuality is generally viewed as unacceptable in Nigeria, and that lengthy prison sentences await those same-sex relationships or even who even support gay clubs, societies, and organizations. Nevertheless, the authorities moved to deport him. After applying for asylum, he was immediately detained. First-tier immigration tribunal rejected his asylum application, and his case failed to appeal. The courts claimed it was safe for him to return, which is obviously a lie. His partner has been killed, and he has been told he'll be killed if he returns to Nigeria. In the UK to seek refuge, and the UK said, well, I assume the UK said, fuck you, your skin's too dark. Yeah, it's, I don't need to go into all the details of that story, but yeah. So, the Tories. So the Tory Attorney General won't rule out changing Equality Act to attack trans rights. So if you don't know the Equality, so or is the Equality Act, I think the Equality Act is being, is that the one, the ban against conversion therapy? I can't remember. Tory MP and Attorney General for England, Wales, Suella Braverman, has suggested that Westminster could block Scotland's vital reform of Gender Recognition Act. While long-promised and life-saving reforms on gender recognition law have basically been scrapped by Downing Street, the Scottish government is pushing ahead with reforms to the Gender Recognition Act because Scotland is amazing and England is a piece of garbage. To make it easier for trans people to get gender recognition certificates, the document that can be used to update the gender marker on the birth certificate. But in an interview with the Sunday Telegraph, Braverman suggested plans to interfere with Holyrood's reforms. She said, I think there are incredible serious implications of what the Scottish government is proposing, and I will be considering whether there are constitutional issues. Effectively, the Scottish Parliament, if this is enacted, will be approving a form of self-identification, and we will have a two-tier system within the UK. I can't foresee how that is workable, whereby north of the border you may be able to self-identify, but a bit south of the border that might not be recognized. What effects does that have on public institutions? Our state, it is incredibly worrying and causes a huge amount of uncertainty. Welcome to the United States of America. We've been dealing with this shit forever. Sorry, the UK government is having too much of a difficult time with dealing with these incongruent laws. I mean, the easier choice, and the choice that's not going to get the Scotland to revolt against England, would be to move your laws towards the 20th century. Not even the 21st century. Just the 20th century, since your laws are back in the 18th century, apparently. Or at the very least, you're trying to get them there. Braverman rattled off a number of anti-trans talking points, saying that she believes that a rights culture has spun out of control in the UK, and that a collective frenzy over trans rights mean the basics of biology have been turned upside down. Yeah, no, so let me tell you a story. A story about math. Most people agree that there are a lot of objective aspects to math, despite the fact that technically math is just a social way of breaking stuff down. But that's beside the point. I took up to Calculus 2. I believe in Calculus 1, I learned a detailed proof to prove that 1 + 1 = 2. I can't remember it, but I know there's a complicated calculus-driven proof that 1 + 1 = 2. And no, that didn't turn basic math upside down. It's just you learn more and you find out things are more complicated than you thought. She even hit out at the 2010 Equality Act, which includes being trans as a characteristic protected from discrimination, claiming it was quote-unquote posing a lot of practical problems for authorities, schools, sporting bodies, prisons, and the NHS. She asked if she was considering changes to the Equality Act or withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. She said that all options are always on the table. Braverman described young people coming out as trans as a social contagion. That's left-handedness. So, yeah, they're just repurposing that attitude as anti-trans stuff. And yeah, I mean, they'll go for gay rights next if they haven't already. So, Tory Minister Sajid Javid changing the law to let researchers access trans people's medical records. So, the Tory minister's latest chilling attack against trans rights, Javid announced Friday he will overhaul the law to open up the medical records of around 9,000 trans people who received gender-affirming healthcare in the last decade. Under the current law, health and care records are confidential. According to the Gender Recognition Act, the medical data of trans people who have legally changed their gender can only be accessed if the information does not enable that person to be identified or individual consent has been given. When a trans person legally changes their gender, so obtains a gender recognition certificate, they are also given a new NHS number, which further complicates getting a hold of trans people's medical record. Since the Gender Recognition Act came into force in 2004, less than 5,000 trans people have been issued a gender recognition certificate, according to the government. Sajid Javid introduced an amendment to the Gender Recognition Act on Friday to allow the records of young people who received gender-affirming healthcare between 2009 and 2020 to be pried open as part of an ongoing CAS review, the Times reported. The amendment will go into effect at 1 month. If you don't know, this is a common practice. So this is a eugenics practice that was, I think Nazis started getting medical records in 1932. So I know so okay, so it's up in 1939 to begin the killing, but 1933 had the Compulsory Sterilization Act. Was 360,000 people sterilized. As early. Okay, so 1935. So there's the mercy killing. I know there was. There was I don't I'm not I mean, because there's the gathering of medical records. Um, oh, there we go. August 18th, 1939, circulated a decree requiring them to report disabled infants. October 1939, it was to send children and disabled children and young children to special clinics. September 1939, relate to the ability to kill people. That's a lot. Euthanasia starting as early as mid to late 1939. But I could swear there was getting records. Okay, I can't find it, but like I know they got record. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm Wait, did I have a not news sites information? I have the breakdown of the Holocaust and truth, gaslighting, intellectually honest and dishonest, Darvo, the IACC, common features of fascism. Oh. Yeah, I swear it was a Holocaust timeline. It's this. I know I read it online. Focused on anti stuff, but emergency powers. There's the forced sterilization part. Pass law against habitual and dangerous criminals, beggars, homeless, alcoholic, concentration camps. From serving the military, Nazis passed laws allowing forced abortions of women to prevent them from passing on a quote-unquote hereditary disease. Yeah, that's the euthanasia part. I could thought there was something regarding records. I guess I'm either misremembering or I read it somewhere else. I'll try to find it later. I'll look into it later, and maybe I can get like proper links. Today I propose a change in laws that prevent review into childhood gender dysphoria can access historical records. Its vital reviews are rooted in the highest quality of. So it's yeah, there while has recently taken a trans right. Control at the Times revealed that intends to launch an urgent inquiry into trans youth healthcare system. One killed Parliament borders on ideological. He also linked children being trans with child sex. Despite the can't find right now either. Yeah, that's fine, Jinx Duma. I'll look into it later. So there's so many Tory rapists out there. Of course, they're calling people who are trans the abuse. So, Reprehensible Tory MP says women have no absolute right to bodily autonomy and abortion. So he's essentially saying that in the case of abortion, he doesn't agree that bodily autonomy is absolute in the case of abortion because the fact that another body is involved. Now, while not perfect, there's a good philosophical thing that was brought up by philosophy too once about abortion. So, like, if someone is physically attached to you, and you have to sever that violently sever that attachment with a knife, but if you do so, you will kill the person. Is it okay for you to do that? And, is it okay for you to do that if you will die as well? Like, it's very much... It shouldn't matter when it comes to bodily autonomy. You should be able to control your own body. Down simply suggested we can disagree on the issue of women's rights. Yeah, it's an unpopular opinion. So, the Scottish Conservatives. So the Scottish Conservatives are left of the English Conservatives. So Scottish Conservative Shadow Secretary Jamie Green has said he can't defend the indefensible when it comes to the UK government's approach on LGBTQ rights. Speaking at Pink News Summer Reception in Edinburgh on Wednesday, Green, who is the most senior LGBTQ plus Scottish Conservative, criticized the UK government's approach to LGBTQ plus issues. I'm not a member of the UK government, first of all. I want to make it that clear, and it's not my job to defend the indefensible. Green went on to share his own experience of growing up gay, revealing that he was targeted by homophobic bullies at school. UK government should honor its commitment on conversion therapy. Jamie Green said the UK government has been very explicit when committed to banning conversion therapy for all LGBT plus key people. He called on the government to honor its commitments. We made a commitment to do that. It was very explicit, and I think it was welcomed at the time, and we should stick to it. Yeah, basically, Scotland's better than UK. Scotland leaving the UK would create the best possible future for LGBTQ plus rights, says pro-independence MP. So, Scotland is supposed to be able to vote their way out of the UK. So, Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has announced plans for a second Scottish independence referendum, and it could decide the future of LGBTQ plus rights in the country. Sturgeon proposed to Scotland's Parliament, Holyrood, a date of the 23rd of October, 2023 for the second vote on independence in a decade. While it is still unclear whether the referendum will even go ahead, it'll be up to the Supreme Court to decide. Pro-independence LGBTQ plus politicians and voters believe that an independent Scotland could be beneficial for the community. Scotland remains divided on whether or not to remain in the UK. Staying in the Union has a narrow lead of 46% to 44%, according to a poll published Thursday by market research company Savanta Cameras. SNP's shadow culture secretary and one of UK's most prominent gay MPs says Scotland becoming its own independent country would liberate it from Westminster, whose track record on LGBTQ plus rights has been spotty at best recently. I would like not to suffer this constant embarrassment I feel whenever I see Boris Johnson wondering what foolish or offensive thing he's going to say next, or what minority group he's going to decide to attack to provide red meat for his backbenchers and tabloids. Nicholson pointed to Downing Street, its repeated failures to protect the LGBTQ plus community, especially trans people, from excluding trans people from conversion therapy ban to dropping life-saving reforms to gender recognition law. Nicholson said Holyrood can simply do it better, and what's more, it already is. Scottish lawmakers are already drafting an inclusive conversion therapy ban and are pushing ahead with reforming the Gender Recognition Act, a piece of legislation Nicholson has been weaponized by Westminster for its nasty culture wars. The Scottish government and Holyrood have shown themselves to be very progressive, and if Scotland were to become independent, we'd see a continuation of this, Nicholson says. And Scottish independence could lead to a kinder asylum system, while Scotland has control over health and education as part of the devolution settlement. An independent Scotland would gain full control over policy areas it does not own, like foreign affairs. One thing Nicholson hopes Scotland would do differently is to treat queer refugees and asylum seekers respectfully. And they bring up the fact that the UK is deporting a gay man to Nigeria who was trying to escape Nigeria because he didn't want to die. Yeah. So, Lewis Hamilton speaks out after a clip of former F1 driver calling him racial slur resurfaces. Lewis Hamilton is using his voice to highlight racism in Formula One. Bleacher Report reports. He spoke out after a clip of former F1 driver Nelson Piquet calling him a racial slur resurfaced on social media. Piquet was discussing an on-track collision in last July's British Grand Prix when he referred to Hamilton as the Brazilian equivalent of the N-word. The former F1 driver argued Hamilton was in the wrong for a first lap crash with Max Verstappen, who was forced out of the race after starting on pole. Hamilton was given a 10-second penalty and won the event. The clip of Piquet use of offensive language resurfaced as F1 returns to the UK's Silverstone circuit. Hamilton addressed Piquet's remarks on Twitter, saying archaic mindsets are still prevalent in Formula One today. It's one language these archaic mindsets need to change and have no place in our sport. I've been surrounded by these attitudes and targeted my whole life. There has been plenty of time to learn. Time has come for action. According to Daily Express, both Mercedes and the F1 have issued statements about the incident. Blah, blah, blah. General statement. The F1 noted that discriminatory or racist language is unacceptable in any form and has no part in society. Hamilton has been working behind the scenes to make F1 more racially inclusive place. Last year, he expounded on his effort, having conversations, trying to hold people in the sport more accountable. I'm constantly sending emails, Zoom calls, all that stuff. In July, he gave F1 their flowers, explaining that things are changing. But this also reminded me of this. No, you can't hear it at all. Whatever. It's a speed racist clip. Okay. It is funny. Racist crashing into fire. Fiery crash. I'm embarrassed that I didn't have sound set up well or something. Anyways, Iran brutally executes gay man over sodomy charge. A gay man has been executed in Iran over a sodomy charge, according to human rights groups, in the latest example of anti-LGBTQ plus brutality in Iran. The human rights activist news agency reported that 10 inmates were allegedly executed in Rajai Shar prison in the northern city of Karaj on the 29th of June. Among them was Aman Safarirad. I can't. If I slaughtered names, I apologize. Whom the news agency and activists claims was likely sentenced to death for being gay. LGBTQ plus people in Iran face unrelenting violence for simply existing. Same-sex sexual activity is strictly prohibited under the Republic's penal code, carrying a maximum penalty of death. But yeah, I mean, this is... I don't have word. Brittany Griner pens open letter to Biden from Russian prison. I'm terrified I might be here forever. She's a WNBA player who played in Russia. She was arrested on February 17th at a Moscow airport after vape cartridges allegedly containing hash oil were found during baggage search. According to ESPN, she was charged with illegal crossing of customs border with illegal narcotics and could face up to 10 years in prison. Yeah, she's an American detainee in Russia. She says, I miss my wife, I miss my family, I miss my teammates. It kills me to know they're suffering so much right now. But grateful for whatever you can do at this moment to get me home. Yeah. 400 people arrested for defiantly marching in banned Istanbul Pride in violent crackdown. Istanbul Sunday, Turkish police arrested hundreds of marchers, protesters, and bystanders around Taksim Square, where LGBTQ people had gathered to begin Pride March. And it's been banned every year since 2015. I mean, essentially banned every year since 2015. And much like what happened with Stonewall, people are still fighting. But yes, 400 people have been arrested for it. Polish appeal courts orders 4 towns to scrap LGBT-free declarations. So this is a problem. I feel like I covered the news article of this the news of this happening, but a Polish court has ruled that 4 towns should scrap their status as LGBT-free zones. Poland's top appeals court dismissed the appeal of the 4 municipalities over the controversial resolutions. The verdicts of the towns of Istebna, can't pronounce that, Osiek, and Cernica. were welcomed on social media by Poland's campaign against homophobia. This decision is a great victory for democracy, human rights, and respect for people, it said on a post on Facebook. Dozens of Polish towns and regions had declared themselves free of LGBT ideology in May 2019. Maybe I didn't cover it. Poland's ruling Conservative Law and Justice Party claims that the so-called LGBT ideology undermines the country's religious and family values, but the bloc slammed Warsaw for violating EU laws against discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation and withheld funding to several Polish regions. After a legal challenge from Poland's human rights ombudsman, lower courts ruled that such LGBT free resolutions must be scrapped. Yeah. Finally, we're at the final story. Same-sex marriage finally became legal in Switzerland, and this couple were the first to benefit. Two people tied their knot on Friday morning when same-sex marriage became legal in Switzerland. So, after the two were quickly entered into civil partnership in Geneva, the first canton or region in the country to grant same-sex couples some of the rights and protections of married couples. Local law, however, did not grant them access to tax benefits or joint health insurance, which were all defined by federal laws at the time. So the new law put same-sex couples on more equal footing, but it has opponents. Switzerland is one of the last countries in Western Europe to allow same-sex marriage. Hundreds of couples throughout Switzerland will transform their registered partners into marriage in the next few weeks. Zurich is booked out with 26 same-sex couples due to marry on the 1st of July. And after Friday, some might not even get a chance to have a religious ceremony. Both Protestant and might even get a chance to have a religious ceremony. Both Protestant and Reformist churches support same-sex marriage, and with former stating in 2019 that would propose a provision in its regulation allowing individual pastors to decide to marry same-sex couples at their church. The law, however, was not without its opponents. The country's Christian Democrats pushed for a referendum in 2016 that would define marriage as durable cohabitation between between a man and a woman, in an attempt to make same-sex weddings illegal under the federal constitution. The referendum, needing a simple majority, was rejected by the slimmest margins of 0.8% of the voters. After a parliamentary initiative to recognize same-sex marriage was passed, the country's National Council in December 2020, the right-wing Federal Democratic Union used the provision of the Swiss law, allowing them to call for another referendum if they collected more than 50,000 signatures. But yeah. Breaking news, Sunak and Javid resigned. So, breaking news. This is the first time we've had breaking news on this show. I wasn't expecting that. So British Prime Minister Boris. Let me save this. This is unexpected Unexpected news. Breaking news. Prime Minister was dealt a huge blow on Tuesday when two of his top ministers announced their resignations, saying they could no longer work for a government mired in scandal. Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid both announced they were quitting in letters posted to Twitter within minutes of each other on Tuesday evening. The public rightly expect government to be conducted properly, competently, and seriously, Sunak said in his resignation letter. I recognize this may be my last ministerial job, but I believe these standards are worth fighting for, and that is why I'm resigning. In preparation for a proposed joint speech on economy next week, it has been clear to me that our approaches are fundamentally too different, Sunak added in the letter. I am sad to be leaving the government, but I've reluctantly come to the conclusion that we cannot continue like this. Javid wrote, "It has been an enormous privilege to serve in this role, but I regret I can no longer continue with good conscience. Javid added that the vote of confidence in the Prime Minister last month was a moment for humility, grip, and new direction. I regret to say, however, it's clear to me that this situation will not change under your leadership, and you have therefore lost my confidence too." The most immediate controversy facing Johnson is Downing Street's handling of last week's resignation of Deputy Chief Whip Chris Pincher, the rapist, who stepped down from his post last Thursday amid allegations that he had groped two guests at a private dinner the night before. While he did not admit the allegations directly, Pincher said in a letter to Johnson that last night I drank far too much and embarrassed myself and other people. Sorry, I guess not a rapist, just a sexual assaulter. Downing Street has struggled to explain why Pincher was in government in the first place amid a wave of revelations about previous alleged conduct. When those reports emerged, Downing Street initially denied that the Prime Minister knew anything specific about them. Then Johnson's team said he had known about the historic allegations, but that they had been quote-unquote resolved. When it emerged that one of the previously unreported allegations against Pincher had been upheld, Johnson's spokesperson explained that resolved could mean that it had been upheld. Then on Tuesday, Stephen McDonald, the former top civil servant at the Foreign Office, revealed that Johnson had been briefed in person about the outcome of investigation into Pincher's conduct. Minutes before Sunak and Javid announced their resignations, Johnson acknowledged that it, quote-unquote, was a mistake to appoint Pincher to his government. UK opposition leader Keir Starmer, who is terrible at opposing Boris Johnson, said it was, quote-unquote, clear that the government was, quote-unquote, collapsing. Tory cabinet ministers have known all along who this prime minister is. They have been his cheerleaders throughout this sorry saga, backing him when he broke the law, backing him when he lied repeatedly, backing him when he mocked the sacrifices of the British people, the Labour Party leader said in a statement released after the two resignations. For months, Johnson has been facing a barrage of criticism over his conduct and that of his government, including illegal lockdown-breaking parties thrown at his Downing Street offices for which he and others were fined. Johnson has faced numerous other scandals that have hit his standings in the polls, despite his 80-seat landslide victory. And just 2.5 years ago, these include accusations of using donor money inappropriately to pay for refurbishment of his Downing Street home and whipping MPs to protect a colleague who had breached lobbying rules. Last month, he survived confidence vote, but the final count of his lawmakers who rebelled against him was higher than his supporters expected. 41% of his own parliamentary party refused to back him. But while he managed to win the confidence vote, he suffered a further blow late last month when his party lost 2 parliamentary by-elections in a single night, raising new questions about his leadership. According to the Ipsos UK survey conducted between the 22nd and 29th of June, Johnson's Conservative Party is at its lowest level recorded in more than a decade when it comes to being seen as quote-unquote fit to govern. Just 21% of respondents said it is fit to govern, the lowest number for either Conservative or Labour since Ipsos started tracking this metric in 2011. And that is the news. I did not expect a breaking news story in the UK, but this is not the best. This is not always the best platform for it, but yes, that is the news I thought was important this week. See you next. If you couldn't miss that, yeah. Thank you, Jinx Tima. Thank you so much. If you are watching this on YouTube, we will see you next week. If you want to stay on Twitch, where I stream this on Tuesdays, I will be playing the incredibly toxic League of Legends. I will still be fine for conversations and responses in Twitch chat. But regardless, have a wonderful rest of your day, whether you stay here or don't.
Justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Sex and race, because they are easy, visible differences, have been the primary ways of organizing human beings into superior and inferior groups, and into the cheap labor on which this system still depends.
No, you all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all?
We want no more segregation. We will accept no more discussion of segregation. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
Freedom is merely privilege extended unless enjoyed by one and all.
All we are doing with this bill is allowing 2 people who love each other to have that love recognised by way of marriage. That is all we are doing.
I speak not for myself, but for those without voice can be heard. Those who have fought for their rights, their right to live in peace.
Sometimes, especially in this body, I feel as though if Christ himself walked through these doors and said what he said thousands of years ago, he would be maligned as a radical and rejected from these doors.